forget, I'm going to record. I hit record. And also before we get into things, I am going to show you the template that I created for you all to use for your exercise glossary. I didn't fill it in, that's your job, but I did kind of format things. So I will kind of go through that really quickly before we hop into things. So one word to describe how you're feeling, where you're calling from. And Chris, is there any specific questions you would like to ask the group?
No, I'm more so curious about this grouping as a whole. It seems very interesting, like a very, very tight-knit community.
We are tight-knit. I'd like to think so. Kelly's sad because it's our last call, so.
Hello?
Oh, wait, there you are. Actually, oh, you know what, guys? I might lag for a second. I'm switching the Wi-Fi, so give me 1 sec. I hope this doesn't stop the recording. Am I here? Oh no. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, beautiful. Yeah. So we have a lot of Halifax here today. Feeling good, LeBron. Nico, I knew you'd be happy about that.
Let's go, James.
We got a lot of our Halifax friends here. Jennifer's from Windsor. Sam is calling. Sam, are you in Victoria? Yes. We have. Kelly, all good. Beautiful. Okay, team. So really quickly, before I introduce Chris is here. I'm so pumped. I'm excited that everyone, everyone good? You guys can hear me? Beautiful. Before we hop into things, I did really quickly want to show you the Google Drive or the Google Doc that I made to share with all of you. As I said in our conversation about exercise glossaries, I think it is a great idea for you to just have an area where you could start to input different exercises you use, start to categorize them. So when you do go to write a program, you know kind of what to pull from. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. There are some really, really kind of advanced ways to build out a glossary to the point where you could build out a programming template and do like drop downs. I'm still learning Excel in Google Sheets, so mine's pretty simple, but it's just to give you kind of a visual of how to separate things. So I am just going to, so I think I did kind of 2 different versions. So actually, I think I just did the one. So again, this is just an option. This is just a variation of what you can do. So we talked about our hip dominant and our knee dominant movements. So this will give you a section to write what the actual exercise is. Maybe you list what equipment you're using or the different variations of equipment you can use. You could also hook up a YouTube link, or maybe you film yourself doing the exercise. So if you are sending this program out, you have that visual component. It's all right in one place for you. For the upper body, it's horizontal press, horizontal pull, vertical press, vertical pull, power, core. I just did examples. So you really can change these however you would like. Oh, I think we have someone else joining us here. You really can modify them however you like. So what I'm going to do is I am going to share it with all of you after the call. And then what I will ask you to do is make a copy of it for you to have in your own records. Because if you start plugging in things into the actual document, then it will be everyone's document. So just know that the main doc is shared with everyone. So if you want to use it, you can make a copy and you could change it however it feels best. That one's actually a little different than the one I have and the one I've created for myself, but I just wanted to give you that kind of visual so you can at least just start getting the exercises down, not really having to worry about formatting things quite yet, because I know formatting itself can be a little daunting sometimes. I'm not going to talk anymore because I promised you week 5 was so you didn't have to listen to me talk for another week, but I am so excited to introduce Coach Chris Robertson. I was just saying to him, we've kind of been connected via social media for the past couple of years. And then recently he's been posting these things that really resonate with you know, my coaching philosophy, but also everything that we've been talking about, you know, the importance of developing your coach's eye and communication and all these different components. So I'm really excited to have Chris here. I did prep everyone by saying if you have questions, so if anyone has any questions, Chris has the floor, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. So I guess I should go with like who I am kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my name is Chris Robertson. I'm pretty young in the game. Been doing this at a high performance level. I've been doing it for the past 5 years. And then I was a personal trainer before, and I started that in my second year of university. So I started as a football player, and I went to Concordia University. I played there for 4 years. I was fortunate enough to get drafted to the CFL. So I was drafted 11th overall to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in 2013. Unfortunately, I actually tore my ACL, LCL, and posterolateral corner. I want to say it was a day before the draft. So I still got drafted.
Everyone's like,
yeah. So yeah, it's a horror story, but you know, you live and you learn. But anyways, so I got drafted. Then I sat out that year. I went back. Then I ended up getting cut. Got sick in camp. Then I went back to school. I finished. Because I still had some credits to do left. So I finished. And then I ended up getting signed by Saskatchewan Roughriders the following year. And then I got released from that team 2 weeks before training camp. And then I was at a pivotal point in my life where I was like, what do I want to do? Do I want to continue chasing football, or do I want to start a career? I chose the latter. So I started out my career and I opened up my business, KRT, Chris Robertson Training. And essentially I started training young athletes. And during that time, I started out, like my first organizational job was actually George Brown. So I worked as a fitness supervisor. And while I was there, I realized I just didn't want to work with like general population. No offense or anything like that to the general population. It's just like, you know, I want to work with high performance athletes. And I feel like I could make a difference with my background and everything. So I did that for about 8 months. And then an internship came up with the Toronto Argos. And I just kind of jumped all over it. And then that's kind of like what jump started my career. So I was there for about a year and a half-ish. And then I got asked to come to Rugby Canada. And I've been here since 2017. And that's kind of the gist of it.
That's awesome. I feel like even just your own experience, you've experienced a lot as an athlete, which is obviously very transferable into the coaching world. What would you say are some of your kind of core values as a coach?
It's a tough question when you think about it.
I know, sorry, I'm really putting you on the spot with that one.
Yeah, I know. When it comes to core values, I don't like to kind of say it like that. I kind of like to think of things in terms of models. I like to be flexible in my thinking. So like, that's why I don't like, when I think of values, I think of something that's like concrete, where I'd like to be pliable and flexible and plastic in anything I do. So I just have models of thinking around certain situations, you know, when it comes to certain programs, how to train a certain population. That's kind of how I think about it.
I love that. So you're adaptable.
Yeah, you have to be in this business.
Oh yeah, especially this year.
Oh man, tell me now.
How have things changed for you in the past 7 months with COVID?
I've become a really good online coach now. You know, I'm doing a lot of videos via WhatsApp. Kind of that's how we do everything. And I'm coaching people up, and you kind of have to, you know, usually I get like when I'm with an athlete, you can like cue them by like touching them to get into a certain position, and like you can like go here. But now it's like you actually have to use very good like descriptors and be very, very precise, because your thumbs are going to start hurting if you have to type a whole thing out, explain one little thing. So you got to be very precise. And I think that comes from like, if you understand the athlete and you can meet them halfway, so kind of knowing where they're at and like where their headspace is at. For example, if I'm if I'm training a soccer player, if I'm training a football player, certain things in the gym, I'll use their sport to kind of help them relate and kind of compound the two things. Take what you don't know, take what you know, and then combine it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's awesome. Do we have any questions before I just keep asking Chris all the questions? Unmute yourself, or you could write in the chat if you don't want to say it out loud, but this is like an open forum. So you guys have the opportunity you have a very good mind to pick right now, a very good brain to pick right now. So don't be shy when it comes to these questions. So with Rugby Canada, what athletes do you work with? Is it primarily like the kind of a broad scope, or like youth, or are you with a specific team?
So I will work, my job is majority like ladies, like female athletes. So I work with our developmental academy, and as well as I work with our senior women's 15s team. So our senior women's 15s team is actually decentralized, or a decentralized environment. So I have athletes, I want to say, on every continent except Africa and Antarctica, and obviously the South Pole in there. But yeah, I have athletes all over the world. So it's training them via online, working with their coaches, seeing where they're at, and kind of, filling in certain exercises, or we're building up certain weaknesses that they have. And then my main job, so the athletes that I do see in my centralized environment are my young high school athletes.
Awesome. And are you still able to see them right now, like with restrictions?
We're going to know more later today, but right now we've been cut down to just 10 athletes. So I'm not sure what exactly is going to happen. So I will know more today or tomorrow or this week or something like that. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I know.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, Toronto's already shut down. I don't think anyone here is in Toronto, so you guys aren't affected, but hopefully it doesn't spread outside. What would you say, and this is such a general question, but what would you say is your favorite part of coaching? Like, what really is, like, what does it for you? Like, what gets you up in the morning being like, I love this and I love what I do?
Making a difference for people. I like to say, the biggest, you can get the how do I say this? Weightlifting, fitness in the gym, things like that gives athletes vitamin C, and that vitamin C is confidence. Especially working with a female cohort as well, is like, you just see what you can do for someone by getting them strong, or getting them to lift loads that they never thought they could ever do, and things like that, are running as fast as they can. And just making a difference for athletes is kind of what does it for me. And that's kind of why I got into this, because I saw what it did for me. So I know I wanted to pass that down to the next generation.
Oh, I love that. Any questions? Don't be shy, team.
I was just typing one, but I'll ask.
Oh, sorry,
if you could recommend like any formal training or certifications, obviously outside of what we're already doing with Elena, and outside of like post-secondary like diplomas, what would you offer for people who want to get into this career, or folks who are just excited to learn more?
There's a few forums that I actually go on. So I don't know if you guys follow, there's this guy named Keir Wyndham-Flatt, the rugby strength coach. So anyways, it's a really, really good, like a site, and it's a site of like a bunch of different professionals. So you have like guys who've been in there for 30 years, people that are new, people that are intermediate. And basically what he does is he does seminars every month. Someone will host a lesson, and you can go on there. They do an hour lecture, then you can actually ask them questions, and then they respond. And then there's always like good conversation that happens. So it's just like, I need to help branding myself. Oh, there's a forum for that. I need help with sales. All right, there's a forum for that. I'm running this program. What do you think of it? And then you can get people to actually chime in on like what you're doing, and you'll get like high level S&Cs that you would otherwise wouldn't have access to through that site. Like it's
Amazing.
I've been on it since 2017. I think it's like, I don't know, $15. It's worth it. And then I would just say, just read, find a subject, attack it, talk to someone who's a professional in that realm, and then go after it. So like kind of my process is like, I take what I need to know. So I think over COVID, that 6-month break, I really got deep into the physiology of power. So understanding, what is the underpinnings of power, how to best affect it, the different types of power, and then applying it to my sport. So I did a lot of reading on that, talked to a lot of different coaches, but I just don't think I've seen, again, I don't want to poo-poo on anyone, but I've seen so many people, they have all these certifications, but they can't coach. Like you have people that have PhDs, 2 PhDs, 2 masters. You're like, oh my gosh, on paper they look great. All right, man, let's see you coach a room with 20 people. Can't do it. So it's just like, don't get caught up in, chasing the certifications and this, that, because yes, it does. It is important. Get your CSCS, do all that other stuff, but just understand that it's an art. Like, so you got to be able to coach people, and that comes from talking to people and right. And like, it's really hard in our era as well, just because you guys all look pretty young. So it's like, we grew up in a texting era, right? Compared to my parents who had to learn to text, we kind of just knew it, right? When it first came out, we started texting. We have to learn to actually get on a call and talk to these people face to face. The best people, I think, like some of the best S&C coaches, aren't even on social media. Like a lot of the really, really good ones that I've had a really good conversation with, he's a Olympic weightlifting coach in Canada, Larry Shepard. He's not on Instagram, but I sat down with him with the entire afternoon at a weightlifting competition, and I just picked his brain for like 2 or 3 hours. So it's like, those human interactions, when we used to, ring the doorbells, not text people that were here, like that era, that's what we have to get back to.
Yeah, I'm actually happy this question came up, because it's one I often hear, and there's a lot of people that I see with tons of letters beside their names. And I do think it is important to be certified to some extent. You want to have, kind of that baseline, that foundation of knowledge. So I know I always recommend the NSCA because I like the way they structure it. You have to have had, a degree when you write it. It takes a lot of time to study for it and to actually write the exam, as opposed to something that you could maybe get done in a couple days. But Chris, you nailed it. It's like, there's some people that have like all the letters, they have all the certifications, but they haven't had the conversations, or they haven't been in the trenches to actually experience things. So I know last week we talked about the importance of working with so many different demographics. And even if there is, maybe one sport or one niche we do want to kind of dial it in on, to get experience with different types of humans, with different athletes, with general population, with high performance, it's all going to teach you something, and it's going to make you a more well-rounded coach than just kind of like, always, like, I know a couple coaches that read a lot but don't apply it at all, right? So it's like, they read all this stuff and it's like, yeah, that's great, but then it's like, what are they doing to actually practice what they've learned? So that's why I made you guys all practice when we went through the cues.
So it's funny that you talk about like the reading a lot too. So another thing that I got caught up in like early was you have to understand that every study is context specific. So just because there's a correlation between this and this does not mean that's going to work in your population. Like, that's the biggest thing that you kind of have to understand when you're reading all these literature. Look at more so the methodologies and how they did things, and then try and apply it to your environment and then see if it works. But do your own data. So I know, you say you're learning about Excel and things like that. Learn how to create a database. That's like one of the most important things that I think, and record all your data. So whether it's every jump, every lift, what they lifted, and then that's how you actually can draw your conclusions. So now it's like, I have a really good app, Team Builder, that I use, and I'm able to actually put all my data together. So now I can tell a story, and figure out exactly why this person got better versus, I don't know, I just put a program out there and then they just did it. So really, really understanding and tracking is so important.
Do you use any kind of daily wellness surveys or any kind of like pre-training testing?
No. So I just found, just because of my population is so young that like literally they come in 1 week, they'll jump out the gym the next week. It's like, oh, okay, what happened? I don't know. Like they're just not there yet and do not have an understanding of their body and things like that. So I'm just really teaching. So it's me actually reading. So it's just like, that's where you have to develop those soft skills on understanding. And like, when I ask someone, how are you doing? An athlete is always going to say, I'm okay. Without it, unless you have some weird relationship that you guys can be like, oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, you know, I'm feeling this today, or this, this is a little sore. I'm a little tight. I don't know if I can do this. You're not going to get that. I'm good. I'm real good. Right. And especially if you work with guys, it's just harder breaking down that wall. With girls, it's a little bit easier, I find. But yeah, you just need to be able to read them and read their faces when they're doing certain things. There's something I learned working with our athletic therapists is like when they do certain things, when they're doing, let's say they're doing a shoulder test or whatever, like, okay, checking their range of motion. They're not looking at the shoulder. They're looking at the person's face. The person's face will tell everything. So it's like when I do certain things, like when we do a max test or something like that, I'm looking at their form, yes, but I'm seeing what their face is and how they react when they come off, when they finish it, how they look. That tells me, okay, you can go up, or you know what, we're done for today. That kind of just tells me the story. So understanding and really knowing those soft skills is important.
Love that. Body language tells a lot. Tells a lot about an individual. We chatted about that. That would have been week 1. I think we went through kind of verbal and nonverbal communication from both the athlete to us as the coach or the trainer, but also how that goes the other way as well. And if we're wearing something on our face, they could probably pick up on it. And they can kind of read a story of that as well. I do have a question that was sent via email. So I'm just going to pull it up here. Thoughts on training a client or group with a workout that is high intensity and high volume for an entire class/session, knowing that is their only workout of the week. So I think she's asking, I do believe she works with a population that she sees less frequently. So, what are your thoughts on a 45 to 60 minute, pretty high volume, high intensity workout? And, how that could be positive or maybe detrimental to their health or overall well-being.
So, I would not recommend that, just for the simple fact of the population that you're working. If they're coming in once a week, the chances of
that's an assumption, I should say.
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying. I'm assuming it's one time a week. I'm assuming if that is the case, they probably don't have really good motor learning, motor skills. So depending on the modality in which you're doing, if I'm assuming this is a form of like CrossFit or something along high intensity with barbells and things like that, I would just be careful, just for the simple fact of like technical breakdowns. And then athletes, if you're working with a large group especially, you're not going to be able to keep your eye on every single one watching things. And then people are going to push through things, and that's how people get hurt. I've seen it firsthand, is like, having a larger group, athletes can mask certain things. If you're walking around a weight room and that person is on their rest break, for example, but you're just happen to pass them, so you actually don't get to see them lift sometimes. Those are things I'd be worried about. If you're doing, maybe if it's just a body weight workout or something like that, maybe that's a little better. But I would not recommend that unless they are technically proficient.
Love that. Any other questions surfacing for anyone?
how do you create an environment where motivation thrives in high performance athletes, both like in person, but even more so like now when everything's virtual?
That's just challenging. So what a lot of I found the girls did is a lot of them just had accountability partners and accountability groups. So they actually kind of did it amongst themselves. And that's what kept themselves motivated. So they'd be like, yeah, me and 3 other girls, we get on FaceTime and we just do our workout together. I find, especially with team sport athletes, they need that togetherness. They need to be in a group to help them thrive. So with them, it's them creating the environment versus me doing something. And a lot of these girls are like self-motivated, so it's not really much I have to do other than just give them a program, talk to them, give them attention, things like that.
That's the beauty of team sport athletes. I feel like if you're on a team sport at a high level, you know how to be a good teammate. And that's like, then those are the kind of things that stem from that is, making sure that you're held accountable, but you're also helping a teammate because you're all working kind of towards the same goal, which is so powerful.
Exactly.
Any questions? Mike, do you have any questions? Yes.
Yeah. So jumping back to that communication piece. So I teach in a class setting and just like nobody responds to any, like, how's everyone doing? Like, how was that set? Like, how's everybody feeling? And it's just silence across the room. Like nobody really engages or interacts, or even at the end of a workout, it's like, so how did everyone find that? And it's like, oh yeah, that was good.
Do they know each other?
Fine. Yeah. Like,
do they?
No, usually they don't know each other.
There you go. How was the first day? You guys know each other? How was the first time you were here?
Pretty quiet and
silent.
awkward. Yeah.
How is it now?
Yeah,
Much
I feel like
better.
there's a little more verbal going back and forth. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. It just, they don't know each other. So you probably should try. I do this all the time. Do icebreakers. So for example, we'll do, pre-COVID, let's talk pre-COVID because I can't, obviously everything's different now, but pre-COVID is like, I would have to do a warm-up for 150 athletes at once, right? So what am I doing?
Wow.
All right, partner up, rock, paper, scissors. Boom, boom, boom. And it's just like everyone starts talking. Everyone starts talking. And I'm like, all right, new partner, go with someone you don't know. Oh, hi, my name is so-and-so. Rock, paper, scissors. All right, cool. Now we up Danny. So we go, okay, we're going to do rock, paper, scissors, chase. Okay. So basically you have partner, rock, paper, scissors. If you lose, you have to turn and run. The other person has to chase you. Right. Then that always turns into both people mess up. Oh my God. Right. They'll laugh. There you go. Icebreaker done. Now everyone's comfortable. Everyone's loose. Now you go do a workout and they're going to be more likely to respond to you if they feel comfortable with each other. So they have a personal relationship with you, but they don't have a personal relationship with each other. So if we think back to, this is what I find. You'll have, in a group of people, you'll have one person that may be like, really outgoing. But for the most part, we revert back to when we were kids and like, you just don't want to stand out. You just want to fit in with the pack. Like when you're in schools, like, you want to dress the same. You don't want to have a weird hairstyle or something like that. Everyone kind of just wants to be the same. And that's kind of how I think of new groups. So you have to get them to communicate and work with each other. And those kind of icebreaker games, you can do that as your warm up. Like don't do a stock, grab the barbell or whatever. Okay. Don't do that. I would recommend doing icebreakers with each other. Or another workout that I find that really works and gets people to communicate is I pair people who are different heights, right? And I'll have someone who is, for example, make an argument's sake, someone who's 6 foot tall and someone who's 5 feet tall. The person who's 6 feet tall has to be on a higher, the squat rack needs to be like the levels need to be higher versus someone who's 5 foot needs to be shorter. What I'll make them do is be like, all right, both of you guys need to squat the bar. You have to go one after another, but you have to make sure the bar is set to the right height. So that means they're constantly communicating because they're like, okay, the first person go, okay, we're going to put yours here. You're going to squat first. Squat. Okay, it's my turn. Let's switch. Okay, we have to move this down. All right, can you move that down? Set it there. Oh, set it to level L or level 6 or something like that. Or I'm at level 10. Cool. All right, now you have to squat 95 pounds. Same process again. They're communicating. So it's just communication is key with each other, not you necessarily. Long-winded, sorry.
No, we are, and I will add, we're never too old for icebreakers. I mean, you all know this because the first day it was like guilty pleasure song on iTunes, favorite dessert, right? But then it's like that creates conversation. It's hopefully allowing some, someone to say like, I love rainbow sherbet ice cream or whatever it is. Mike, I know in the group class setting, it could be a little bit more challenging because you constantly have new people. I've done like hands up if you love vanilla ice cream, or like put your left hand up if you love vanilla, put your right hand down if you love strawberry or something, because I know, especially now with the restrictions, it's a little bit more challenging because I know you guys are kind of blocked off. So it could be like, raise your hand if you got up before 7 a.m. Raise your left hand if you got up after 10, or just like, finding
I'll just have to get a little more
people
creative given the space restrictions, and like can't really do a partner piece as much. So try to find a way around that. I definitely notice, I guess pre-COVID, there was a whole lot more almost like camaraderie and conversation and stuff, doing more of like a circuit workout where you would move as a little cohort to each piece and you got to know who you were with. But now that we can't really do that, I guess we'll have to find some different ways around it.
You get innovative.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff on YouTube too. Like, just type it in and you'll find so many things. There is a video for everything. Everything. There's a video for it.
If I don't know how to do something, I just either go to Google or YouTube and just say like, how do I do this? And something comes up.
Always. Really good.
Nico, you got any questions? Sam, Madison, now I'm calling names. If you don't have any questions, that is totally fine. Chris, if there is a sport that you would love, not to say that you want to, leave your rugby crew, but if there was a sport that you could work with, what would that kind of ideal sport be for you? A sport other than rugby, I should say.
Football. That's pretty simple. Yeah. Football. I would, to challenge myself, I would like to work with track. Just because, I think as an S&C coach, you got to be so dialed in to do, I call them stopwatch sports, right? Everything is so measurable. For example, I can have this team, the fittest, the strongest, like a rugby team, and they still lose a match. That's tactical, right? Whereas with sprinting, the 100-meter sprint, you better be dialed in, man. You got to know how to peak the athlete, know what's best for your athlete. And that's it. You sink or float. So that's that. But football, I'd love to go back to football eventually. Who knows? But that's I like to stay in the contact realm.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, going off that, what sort of things are kind of staples for your programming when it comes to working with contact athletes? Madison, did I ask the question you were thinking of?
Sort of. I was just going to say, let's say, what are 3 big differences or 3 staples that you would keep the same in programming if you were working with football players compared to track athletes? 3 foundational movements that you would keep or remove.
That question is context specific. So in the sense of, you need to first understand your sport. So you got to reverse engineer the sport. So pretty much whenever I work with any new sport or anything like that, I look at, all right, what are the demands? What are the biomotor, bioenergetic, and biodynamic aspects of the sport? So, and then what energy system do they rely upon as bioenergetics? And then I work backwards from that. So in rugby sevens, and then I go to what are the injuries, okay? And then I then I think I'll formulate a program. So I'll go with injury, rugby sevens. We deal with soft tissue injuries are at a high just because of the high physical outputs of the sport, the high running speeds that are involved. In the female cohort, shoulders are like a main thing that just goes. Again, with female anatomy, females generally having less musculature, especially around the shoulder girdle. So we spend just a lot of time, just a lot of volume in upper body and getting their shoulders stable. And in my cohort, biggest thing is found is the girls that can do pull-ups are less likely to get injured. That's just kind of how I look at it. If a girl can do a pull-up, all right, I know her shoulders are decent. Let's continue to work on that. I look at ankles are a big thing that happens, hamstrings, groin. Again, all these are all soft tissue injuries. And then, your aerobic base has to be massive just because of the alactic aerobic aspects of the sport itself. So they need to be really fast and really fit. So it's a tough sport in that way.
Yeah. Love that. And what about when it comes to why is the word slipping out of my head? I can't think of the word. Football, rugby, contact sports. When you work with contact sports, what are some staples in your programming to support that contact?
Again, working that shoulder girdle, neck. Football is a lot bigger the neck is a lot bigger in football just because of have a projectile on your head and you're aiming at someone. Rugby players tackle a lot better just because simply they have no equipment. So their head has to get out of the way. That's one thing I noticed. I just think in team sports, relative strength, just increasing relative strength, figuring out what that threshold of strong enough is, and then going from there. And that's kind of just the gist of it. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing special. It's really, there's just the basics, just repeating the basics over and over and doing them well.
I love that.
How do you
Sam?
find it? Oh, sorry. How do you find it working with like a whole medical team and like different coaches for your athletes who like might not be here, and like just the team that you guys have at Rugby Canada with like athletic therapists, doctors, and RPs and everything?
Yeah, it gets tough sometimes, especially when you're not with an athlete. So in a decentralized environment, just communication. So basically, to give you an idea, for our 15s team, our therapist is in BC. I'm here. Our coach is here as well. But then we'll have girls, again, that are in Australia. There's, girls in New Zealand. It's a 16-hour time difference. So how do we make that work? And making sure that we're all in constant communication. Making sure that the girls are comfortable enough to actually come and talk to us. That's another thing. But in terms of working in a cohort, it's just relationships. How strong of a relationship do you have with that person that you're working with? You need to be able to be vulnerable. You need to be able to challenge them. And those things are important. So building a relationship does that. So, for example, if you guys have a sister or your parents, they may have a pet name for you that no one else calls, right? You guys have a certain relationship that you guys are comfortable saying these different things. It's the same thing if we're in another environment. You need to build up a relationship where you are comfortable with that person to have the discussions around your work. And having a good relationship outside of the sport helps as well. So if you guys actually can talk about other things other than what your job is, I think that will go a long way.
Love that. Yeah, the time difference though must be tough.
It's there.
Like you probably have to have a very like scheduled, like this is when we're This is when we're talking kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's like generally what we do is like we meet like once a month on Sundays at 3:00. That just seems to be the good time everywhere. So 12, 16, yeah, so it's 7 a.m. in New Zealand at that time. So it's
Gotcha.
not that bad.
Okay.
So they make it work.
I'm just full of questions for you. But favorite topic or something that you've dove into that still pertains to kind of the world of coaching, but maybe a different skill set of coaching. So I know, I've seen you post a ton about like hamstring strength and all these different things, but maybe something that is, again, still under the umbrella of coaching, but maybe different. Could be nutrition, mindset, something kind of like outside of maybe your immediate scope.
So I haven't really gone too far outside of my realm yet. So there's a good saying, you got to know the rules before you can bend them. So I need to understand my sport, my realm, my profession of S&C strength conditioning a lot better before I can start taking things from outside and then bringing them in. So again, there are things, don't get me wrong, but I don't read into them. So like understanding soft skills, understanding mindset, a lot of those things like I did learn when I was an athlete, but it's not something I have to dive too deep into. But like these next 6 months, I'm actually learning a little bit more about nutrition. So I've gotten into it and understanding the physiology of fat loss, muscle building, as well as the effects of nutrition on cognitive performance.
Love that. That's awesome. So that's kind of branching out a little bit.
Yeah, it's getting there, but it's it's new. So that's kind of I'm just getting into it, but it definitely does apply with some interventions that we're actually going to be running here. Hopefully, who knows, right? But we'll see.
Let's hear with our fingers crossed. Do we have any other questions? Also, if anyone has any questions,
no programming questions. That's like my favorite topic.
Don't be shy. I feel like Madison's like, I'm thinking of one. Sam, go for it.
So obviously you guys were set to peak for the Olympics. How did your programming have to change once you found out that they were canceled and you were basically like going into a whole new training period?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, like that's not, I don't work with the national team, the national sevens team that goes to the Olympics. They're out in Victoria, but I deal with our academy athletes, and essentially all it was is we peak April, May, in around that area, depending on when the competitions are, but that's when we peak. So we just left. We were just coming out of our heavy strength phase, and then that's kind of the gist of it. And then we went to online programming, at home workouts, and that's kind of just all that changed.
So I know you discussed a little bit about, you kind of do your needs analysis of the sport and, strengths and weaknesses and what could happen kind of is it the pitch? Do rugby players call it the pitch?
Yeah, they call it the pitch.
It's called? Okay. I want to use the correct terminology. But aside from kind of that needs analysis, do you have almost like a system or a pattern that you follow when you go to actually sit down and write a program? Let's say like, you have a new group of athletes, you kind of go through their sport, you go through maybe their specific needs. Is there anything else that you almost have as kind of steps when it comes to programming?
No, I just have I've created so many different templates that I just use. So depending on if they're 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, are they ready for a upper lower split? Do they need total body? And yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. It's nothing really crazy, nothing special.
I feel like if someone watched you program, they'd probably see the structured system, but because you're so used to it, you're like, it's
No,
like second nature.
I can share my screen.
Let me make you a host, and then you can share it.
I'll show you. I'll show you my system.
Get an inside scoop here.
Yeah. Okay, there it is. All right, where is this? Share screen. Perfect. What do you guys see right now?
Colors.
Do you see a chart effort on the top left?
Yep.
All right, cool. So here I have, pretty much I have a bunch of these Excel sheets that I use. So like I'll show you, I'll start off at the top here. So pretty much here is like my ratios. So ratios of strength. So I input how much that person weigh. You weigh 200 pounds. It kind of gives me some good numbers of strength and where you should be. Okay. And this is my templates. So I started off with, I don't know, how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. Yeah, so these are 9 different types of templates that I have. I recommend the book. It's called The System. Not System. I'll send it to you. You can send it to the group. But yeah. It's a book by Joe Ken on the tier system. The tier system by far is probably one of the best books to help you think about programming and actually fitting everything into your program. So yeah, this is how I first started. I don't even use these anymore, but I do like to keep these here just to show me kind of where I've been, where I came from. Here's a 2 system. And then now I use a combination of max effort, dynamic effort days. And this is kind of what it looks like. So there's lower body, max effort squat, max effort deadlift. And then this is kind of the exercise. So there's remedial. They have their explosive exercises. So that's like your cleans, jumps, whatever it may be. The squat, something for the lower back, hamstring, single leg. That's just my program. And then those are optional. Anything with the star is optional. Same thing, switch out now with the deadlift as a max effort, the main movement. Dynamic effort, this is what it looks like. Remedial explosive. You're moving some kind of squat, knee bending fast, deadlift fast. So you're actually working a combination of explosive strength and starting strength on this day. So the hamstring, single leg. Here's the upper body one. Max effort, dynamic effort, explosive, horizontal or vertical push, horizontal, vertical, supplemental, a triceps exercise, a pull, and then something to do the upper back and shoulders. And then here is my 3-day here. And this is kind of, this is where I stay at now. It's kind of my bread and butter. So you can see the amount of sets that you do for these exercises. You can do anywhere from 3 to 12. And then these exercise 4 and 5 is 1 to 3. And then I work on terms of vectors. So here, this day here is like a vertical emphasis. So we'll do a big proportion of our jumps is vertical in nature. Okay. I'm a firm believer in chase the adaptation of the day. So the system understands the stressors, but if you keep feeding it the same stressor all the time, it's going to adapt better. Instead of having a program where, for example, if we're doing eccentrics on this day, I'll do everything 5 seconds. So we're doing a split squat, it's 5 seconds down. We're doing a pull, 5 seconds down. Good morning, 5 seconds down. A hamstring exercise, RDL, Nordic, or reverse hyper, something like that, 5 seconds down. Tricep, 5 seconds down. That's kind of what I do. So vertical, then there's a horizontal day. Then you have a speed endurance day, and it's a combination of vertical and horizontal. And then here's the jumps. So 24 to 40 jumps, throws, if I want to put them in, 15 to 30 throws. This seems to be that good threshold. And then here are my lower 2-day template that I use. Here is something to help me in terms of energy system development. So these are kind of the categories of fitness. So when I look at my sport, if my sport is alactic aerobic sport, I know I'm going to stay in alactic power. So exercises or modalities that are less than 6 seconds in nature, right? So we're trying to improve the alactic abilities. And then aerobic capacity, aerobic power, aerobic 1 and aerobic 2. So aerobic 1 is like mass work. So that's like the 15-15s, if you guys have heard of that before. Aerobic 2 is like my tempo-based work. Aerobic power is my longer intervals. Aerobic capacity is kind of the steady state. And you kind of need a combination of all those to help improve. I have my strength, so different types of strength. Speed, I have my different zones. So acceleration 1, 2, max velocity 1 and 2. And then this is my peaking index. So it just helps me figure out how far in the hole can I put them. If I know, all right, we're 4 to 6 weeks out. Okay, I know that's a 4. So they're going to be pretty fatigued. They're not going to be at their best. 1 is like their optimal competition form. So they are ready to go. Okay. Has nothing changed. So here's my percentage charts. So this is a combination of Prilepin's chart. A.S. Prilepin is a famous weightlifter from the Soviet Union back in the day. He figured out, and the Russians figured this out long before us, and understanding in terms of they have all these textbooks and things now and papers that show this to be true, but they figured this out in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Essentially, if you guys understand what RM loads are. So if you're working at like a 10 RM is approximately 75%. If you do things to failure, your adaptions will be lower just because you're fatiguing yourself. They figured out if you can do 2/3 of the maximum amount allotted. So if you do 6 reps at 75%, you'll be better. You'll get stronger, get faster, get fitter, versus if you were to do 10 reps, if that makes sense. So just making sure that you leave some reps in reserve. So essentially, this here just a kind of a chart that goes through it in terms of the volumes that I use, depending on where they are. If I know they're at a peaking index, or we're 5 weeks out, 8 weeks out, I can go higher volume. But I generally stay in this zone here, the medium volume, which is like optimal. And then you can see kind of like the recovery. And then this is my power templates that I use in terms of where I train certain power exercises. These are just different zones. It's another thing. Standards, programming. Let me see what I got here. Conditioning. Let's see what so here's my conditioning program. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Oh, and there's another thing. So in my sport, repeat alactic abilities are really important. So repeat alactic abilities essentially is repeating high intensity efforts. So I actually can train that. So that's just something that I do as well. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Any questions from that?
That was awesome. Thank you for giving us such a sneak peek.
It's not really a sneak peek. The thing is I took this from so many different sources. I just put it into my own thing. That's what I recommend you guys do, is how, she talked about you guys are having that Google sheet. Create something like that, and then just make it your own. And then keep track of everything, and you can kind of see where you've been. You know, like I look at programs I wrote like 2 years ago. I'm like, what a joke. So, you know, so it's always nice to continue to see where you're at because I constantly track. But yeah, that's kind of it. And then I have like a whole exercise catalog as well that I use. That I put one exercise and I categorize them as well. So you got to just figure out your own system.
Yeah. It is nice to have everything in one place though. Like have everything in like one document or one folder or whatever it is, because then that way if you do need to make references. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I had mentioned him last week, Dave. He's a strength coach at Brock, but he has a YouTube channel and literally walks you through like every tutorial you could possibly need on Excel. So I will be sure to put his put the link to his YouTube channel in our follow-up email.
His is really good, strength coach tutorials, as well as Excel tricks for sports.
I've never heard of that one.
Right, yeah, he's really good. There's another guy, I'll put him in, Adam Virgil, I think that's how you spell his name. Okay, they all do really good YouTube tutorials. I use Dave's a lot. He's Canadian, so I like to stay home. But yeah, the other guys are really good as well. Excel tricks for sport, yeah. And they do really good stuff. I think it's again, like I tell this to all young strength coaches, you can get yourself a job by knowing how to do things on Excel well. People do not want to do it, but if you know how to create a database, categorize things, you can make yourself a really good assistant. And then that's what you build that portfolio up, right? And then you get the honor to do other things as well. But knowing Excel can get you a seat at the table. Like when I worked with the Argos, my mentor, my boss at the time, Matt Barr, he just told me, he's just like, you need to know this. Like that's it. He just said, you need to know this. You need to understand how pivot tables work, different types of tables, slicers, formatting, all of that. You understand that, you can get yourself in the door. And I've seen situations where it doesn't matter, like you can teach someone to be a good coach, but like these are good skills. So like, every job interview you go to, they ask, are you proficient in Word, PowerPoint, email, but you never really have to actually utilize it with those jobs for the most part. Well, like as a strength coach, you do. Like you just understand Excel, Google Sheets to a point, but Excel is what everyone has. Just know it. That's it. And it's not hard. It's free. Take some time.
Yeah.
Get all your data and go from there. Like, for example, I built out my database. I have now over 10,000 lines of data of like everything. So like our strength work, our jumps, everything. And I can pull it up. If you ask me, what did X athlete do in 2017? All right, cool. I can pull it up in 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. So that is where it becomes powerful and it saves you time.
Yeah, it makes things very efficient. With the guys I work with in the summer, hockey players, they're all like, they're all pretty close in terms of strength, but I have it plugged in. So when I put, their percentage that they're working at, it just like, I set up the table. So it like auto populates the number. So I know exactly what number they're lifting at when we're working at a certain percentage, and it's saves time from like calculating things, and it's just like all right there and it's automatic. So it takes time to set up, but then once you set it up, it saves you so much time as you actually utilize those numbers and those formats.
Even if you don't do that, you actually can put like I use percentages, okay? But you can even do, like I built out a chart, like a table. So we'll have like from 50 to 120 on one side. And then at the top, we'll have like 100 all the way to 500. So you just go look for your max, right? You go, okay, I lift 550, cool, 75% it's queued up and it's right there. You can kind of, that's another
Yeah.
way. I used to put it on their programs before that.
Yeah.
Because not every time, like sometimes you would have, when I work with some athletes, like they obviously don't know their max, or we're not testing it. So I'll tell them, like, oh, yeah, you're going to work at 100, you're going to work at 150. Okay, cool. These are my numbers I need to work with.
Yeah. A lot of weight rooms have those charts up like on the wall or something. So it's easy to, like, you can order them off Amazon, or there's a ton on Google too that you can kind of see. And that's some of the stuff that
Excel, man.
Yeah, that's true. It's also like a good practice to go through it yourself.
Yeah, understanding like the functions too, like how to do those things, lock cells.
Oh yeah, it's like a whole world in Excel.
Yeah.
So
the thing
do
is,
we
is
have
like
any
the functions I forget. Like I have to go. I know you can do it. I'm like, I have to like Google it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is how you do it.
Yeah, I Google everything. Everything I Google. Cooking a turkey this weekend, Googled it.
Yeah.
Plug it into YouTube. Everything's in there. Do we have any other questions that anyone wants to ask? We're already 2 minutes over. My final question, I always like asking this. Favorite and most recommended book. So if you were to recommend a book to someone, generally speaking, this could be strength and conditioning specific. This could be a really great fiction book you read. Is there a book that you love to recommend to people?
My answer is gonna be pretty boring. It's my fault. I'm very one-track minded. So I would say The System. It's a weightlifting book, and basically it just teaches you how the Russians did it and what their program was and how they put things together. It was just remarkable. You're like, wow. And you just see like their calculations and how everything was math in terms of like how much volume they would do, like how they would count how many reps you would do in a month. And then they increase that by 10% all the time, which is how they keep a continuing volume and not overtraining their athletes. So yeah, for me, that was one of the best books I've read.
Love it. Love it. Okay, team. If we don't have any final questions, I will send out a follow-up email with the recording. So if you want to watch this back, or anyone that's going to be joining us for the recording, we'll have it. I'm also going to plug in a couple different pieces of information that we chatted about, or things I want to keep you in the loop on. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. And I know everyone was like glued to the screen. I love it. If any other questions pop up, I will get them over to you, Chris, or if I could share your email or whatever it is.
Yeah, no problem. I would say if you could so I send out like weekly emails about things that I'm reading, things about S&C. So it's a good email list. I'm biased, obviously it's mine, but like it's a good email list to get on. My social media is there. Talked about that, and then and Twitter is where I do most of my stuff.
See, I'm not on Twitter. I go on Twitter
The thing is, what I realize now is Twitter is where there's a lot of good discussion on Twitter that you don't see on social media. Social media is for the general population, the flashy. Oh yeah, I did this. Oh cool. The heavy hitters are on Twitter.
Yeah,
and all
Twitter.
The discussions and the debates and what people are doing. People have their threads, right? And it's just, I think Twitter's better for S&C. Twitter's a lot better. You don't see a lot of that fluff about, it's just flash, right?
Yeah, totally. Well,
Twitter's
Instagram's very visual, so whereas Twitter's like the meat of
Twitter's very good
things.
content based. Very good content.
Yeah. Got to make my way back to Twitter, I guess.
Yeah,
everyone's like, okay, now we all got to go get Twitter. Too many social media platforms. But again, Thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone for the past 5 weeks. It was an absolute pleasure. And I will follow up with a nice lengthy email. I can't make any promises that it will be short and sweet because I have lots of things. If anyone wants to set up that 30-minute follow-up call to go through the case study, or to go through any questions that you have that surfaced over the past 5 weeks, that will be kind of our opportunity to chat one-on-one. And I will be running a level 2 in November, and then new cohorts will come out in 2021, which is wild. So last cohort of 2020 will be November, starting that first week. Thank you, team. Thank you, Chris. Have an awesome week, day. Much love to you all.
Thank you again, and see you guys. Bye.
Bye.